Hey guys, today I wanted to talk to you about a new instrument I'm releasing for Kontakt called Sonalkiss Primordial Sounds of Creation. I'm really excited about it. This is an instrument for the full version of Kontakt. It is not a Kontakt player instrument, so you will need the full version. It is good for Kontakt 5.8.1 or higher. Now, in this video, I want to dig into what the instrument does, the key switches, the nuances, the notes that are playable, things like that, rather than get into the philosophy behind it. I'm sure there are going to be many questions. On the Storyteller Store website, there are links for supplementary reading for some of the techniques and concepts discussed in this particular video. And if you have more questions, you can visit sonalkiss.me. Again, sonalkiss.me. All right, let's dive in. So to begin with, I have the instrument pulled up, and the first thing I want to point out is that this instrument comes with 5 particular Kontakt NKI files. Now, without going into too much detail about the philosophy about what this instrument does, just know that the 5 instruments are variations as to how the binaural feature works. So you'll see that they're named LR hold decrease, LR hold increase, LR average V1, they all have V1, RL hold decrease, and RL hold increase. The gist of this is that L and R stand for left and right, R and L, right and left. Hold means that when the binaural feature is engaged, one of the channels, the left or right channel, will maintain the frequency that was being played, while the other channel will either shift up or shift down in pitch to create this binaural technique. So LR hold decrease means the left channel holds, the right channel decreases in pitch. Hold increase, the right channel increases in pitch. RL hold decrease, RL hold increase is the opposite. The right channel holds and either the left channel decreases or increases. My favorite of all 5 instruments, the one I prefer to use and the one I would recommend jumping into first, is LR average. Now, the LR average, what it does is it actually shifts the pitch in the left and right ear simultaneously. The left ear dropping down, the right ear moving up. And generally, it wouldn't matter much in the whole scheme of creating binaural tones, but because this instrument, the frequencies that are being played are so important, so very specific, that to be able to choose between each of these 5 instruments is really critical as to how a person wants to use this particular instrument across their meditative music or even just their other music creations. So LR average actually shifts the pitch down and up in each channel, but the brain will hear the average between the two. So your ears will hear the slight variances in pitch. The brain will kind of translate to an average between the two. So while this particular instrument is very focused on the frequencies being played, the binaural feature here actually engages an additional subtle element that will engage the brain into averaging out the sounds. All that being said, let's dive in really quick. So you'll see the instrument itself is very basic on the screen. There aren't a lot of knobs on this screen. There are 2 particular areas I want to draw your attention. The first is where my mouse is moving. This area above the Sonalkiss logo, it says angelic scale. By default, CC1 is going to control a feature called the scales. We'll get into this in a minute, but as you move CC1, you'll see the indication change on the screen here. And in the bottom right hand corner, you have a binaural knob. As this moves, and it's controlled by CC2 by default, you will see that a lot of information pops up. In general, the binaural phases are broken down into delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma, depending on how much of a frequency shift that you're providing between the left and right channels. And there's some additional information below. What this means is included in the manual, so I'm not going to get into that here. All right, so let's look at the keyboard down at the very bottom. So you'll notice that there are a set of green key switches, yellow key switches, a purple key switch, and an orange key switch, as well as a series of blue sections. These are playable keys. We'll get into that in just a minute. The key switches themselves, the green keys, there are 9 of them, and they do the same thing as CC1, but rather than being subject to a sequential order, because as you move CC1, it's going to move from the first scale to the second scale to the third to the fourth, and so on. The green keys allow you to jump from the first scale to the fifth scale, back to the third, to the ninth, and so on. Now, I also want to point out that CC1, while there are 9 scales in this particular Kontakt instrument, CC1 will start on scale 1, and as you move all the way up, after you pass the 9th scale, the very top of the CC range will give you the angelic scale again. That allows you to do a full circle of scales with the slider. But anyway, just know that the green keys at the bottom enable you to control the same feature as CC1 via key switch. The yellow keys right here, there's 6 of them. They control the binaural knob in a similar way, but while the binaural knob has numerous different frequencies, you can see them changing. Let me zoom in here. You can see them changing as I'm dragging the knob. What they have on each of these key switches is a very specific frequency chosen in the middle of each range. So the first key switch flips binaural off. The second key switch flips it to delta. The third key switch to theta. Fourth to alpha. Fifth to beta. And I'm sure you can guess, sixth to gamma. All right, all that being said, the next key switches, there is a purple and an orange key switch. The purple key switch engages an animation. It's just a toggle, turns it on and off, the face in the instrument itself. And the orange key switch toggles velocity control. So by default, all of the keys, and I'm going to hit the up arrow on the Kontakt instrument so you can see all of the blue keys. Each of these keys offers a single volume. So by default, when you play these, you're not going to get any variation of volume based on the velocity. All right, so one of the things that you might have noticed are the blue keys at the bottom. There are 3 sets of 9 and then 1 additional blue key. These are the playable keys. Essentially, you have 28 playable keys on the keyboard, but these 28 keys are exponentially expanded upon because for every key there are 9 variations. So really quickly, if I'm playing a note on a particular scale, so I'm starting on angelic scale, if I slide CC1 up, you're going to hear it subtly change in pitch. And so each of these scales, that we'll call it for each note, each of these scales offers a slightly different frequency of the actual note being played. Now, each of these particular groups of 9 are kind of like octaves. So if you consider on a keyboard, you go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, and it repeats all over. This is very similar, but because we are not using traditional tunings as would normally be mapped across a keyboard, these are referred to as fractals. And these fractals, there are 9 notes, and then when you move up to the next fractal, you have another set of 9. Now, instead of the pitch doubling, as in what is very traditional on a keyboard, the C above middle C is twice the frequency. What you have here is that each of the particular fractals follows a different type of logic. Long story short, for example, this first key is 111 hertz. Well, first key in the middle fractal here. So 111 hertz. The next fractal above this key is 1110 hertz. So 111. This is 1110. Now, if we go all the way down, you'll see that in this fractal, you can probably guess what's going to happen. It goes down by a decimal is what we'll call it here. So this is 11.1 hertz. Now, yes, the first key does fall outside of the spectrum of what a human ear can hear. However, it is mapped there for a reason. And what it does is it if you consider again how octaves circle back, and also consider how colors, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and then it will cycle back. You can think of this as a color wheel. The top key up here is the highest pitch that can be heard by the human ear of playable tones in the solfeggio system. Now, that doesn't mean that they stop there, but that's the last one that you'll be able to hear with the human ear. So we've provided an option of when you play this lowest note that you can blend it with the top note. That will make sense as we dig into the configuration tab, which is a great segue. So if we look at the configuration tab, you'll see that it's a panel full of a lot of knobs. There are 27 knobs in this main section and one in the bottom right. These represent each of the 28 playable keys. So what you have is the ability to map each knob to a specific CC, whatever you would like. Again, the only CCs that are mapped by default are CC1 and CC2. So these particular knobs are all mapped to the sets of blue keys. These are the first 9, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. The middle set of knobs is the second fractal. The third set of knobs corresponds to these keys. And then the subsonic blend is what I just discussed earlier. It is this highest blue key, which we're calling a singlet because you don't have the entire fractal. It allows it to be played and blended in on top of this lowest note, since that would be below what you can hear with the human ear. Now, you'll also notice on the left side, you have an indicator for velocity being disabled or enabled. Again, that was the key switch that I discussed a little while ago. So if you enable this particular feature, you'll notice that when you play the notes, you'll see that the knobs are bouncing around. They'll just correspond with the velocity that you're playing. You can turn it back off, and your notes will play at the velocity that they're currently set at. Again, you can control the volume, or you can go ahead and just reset it to default. Now, all of these features allow for so much creative control. One of the probably most used features of solfeggio tones and binaural sounds is that they drone on and on and on in meditative music and other types of sonic creations. So generally what you have is you'll have a nature sound, and underneath that nature sound in a meditative track or a guided meditation, you'll have the binaural sounds come in, which is usually just one pitch, and this pitch gets separated into a left and right channel, and it allows the brain to focus on the deviation of frequency, and that's what allows the brain to find a meditative state. So I did not want to get into too much of that, but the gist of it is that when these notes drone on and on for 30 minutes or for an hour or however long these creations are, you may want to bring the volume up on some of them, lower them. Again, what you're going to be able to craft from the tools that this particular instrument provides is something that has never been available before. That's what I'm so excited about. So previously you would have to have a sine wave generator inside of your DAW, and that sine wave, you're going to be limited to that one particular frequency unless you just have multiples. And when you play them, then you're going to have to automate your volume curves through envelopes. So in this particular method, you have all of the solfeggio tones available at your fingertips. Not only are the main 9 notes available, but all 81 of the traditional notes in all of the different solfeggio scales. This is referred to as a solfeggio matrix, a Pythagorean matrix. All of those are available, but not just that. You have the fractal below, the fractal above, and the singlet above that. So you actually have 252 tones that are very awesome to use for these types of purposes. If you're unfamiliar with solfeggio frequencies, the logic behind them dates all the way back to Pythagoras and Plato and Aristotle and Archimedes. All these guys had figured out the beauty and the reason that base 9 math was important in this world, and the tones and how they apply to sound and light. there's a lot that's available there. I've been blessed to be able to have additional discoveries, as some others have as well. And there are numerous books that have been written. I've published 2. You can check those out. They're available from the Storyteller website. You'll find those spotlighted. But these particular books, they open up a world of knowledge. It kind of draws from all of the past philosophy, science, math that was involved in the discovery, and it brings it into a more relevant real world state, a reason for their existence. If you don't want to read the whole books, that's okay. There's a supplementary guide available with the Sonalkiss instrument inside of the documentation folder. That said, there are actually 3 in the documentation folder. There is the main manual. There is a second supplementary reading, which is a 20-page document that I wrote that kind of gives a very, I'm going to say, high-level overview, but it's really in-depth in 20 pages as to what's going on with these frequencies and the binaural tones and why they're so important. It's not just a hogwash theory. They hold very special characteristics that tonally can affect biology, physiology, and your spiritual state. I think of them as a way to help the body remember doorways. And that's the best way. Again, I don't want to get too esoteric in this particular video, and I'm sure there will be more to come. But the gist of it is that you now have a tool that allows you all this creative control. You can start a meditative track with we'll say an alpha tone, and blend it down into a theta tone over time. You can bring in different solfeggio frequencies that can affect people in different ways, or use triads, or really use your imagination. I'm so excited to hear what people are going to create with this. Yes, it is a very unique instrument that's used in a very unique and special set of circumstances, but the fact that there has never been anything like this is something that I'm extremely proud to have been able to create and bring into the marketplace. So all that said, I hope you enjoy this walkthrough. Thank you for checking out the video. Please hit subscribe if you have not done so. Thank you for watching.